a five-time regional champion, multiple tops at international championships, world championships, and this is a close matchup here. It's going to be hopefully a lot closer than we saw in that previous match.
Yeah, Eternatus really can I mean, this matchup really can go either way, to be honest. Eternatus puts on so much pressure very, very quickly, but at the same time, a Reshiram and Charizard GX can put on a lot of pressure really, really quickly. It's going to come down to those opening turns, I think, as both of these decks can be really fast and really aggressive. But Azul does have a little bit more comeback potential, I feel like, with that Blacephalon being a one-prize Pokemon that can pick up a big one-hit knockout on an Eternatus VMAX. We'll have to see how this game is going to play out. I'm excited to see it, Ethan. I'm sure you are. Let's go ahead and get down to the match and see that ever important opening coin flip.
Yeah, this coin flip is going to be big. I think both players maybe want to go their own way. We'll see what Azul actually decides to go. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Azul opt to go second. This is one of the few matchups where Power Accelerator is very important. We talked about pressure early on being important in this matchup, especially on Azul's side. What do you think, again, this deck, so many different attackers, the Cramorant V, the Reshiram and Charizard. What do you think Azul's best way to apply pressure early on in this game is going to be?
Yeah, I think Cramorant's Spit Shot is an extremely good option early on. What you can do is just target down the Pokemon that ideally gets an energy on turn one. But as we actually look at Andres' hand here, looks like he's going to be missing a key piece, and that is that basic energy attachment. So that is very fortunate for Azul, and we could see Azul go a little aggressive here potentially with a Reshiram and Charizard even, now that your opponent did not get an energy attachment.
Yeah, and speak of this hand, this is not looking very good, even for the following turn. Has no draw supporters, no draw Pokemon. Azul being able to bump that power plant right away, playing some of those key support Pokemon GX, the Dene, as we talked about before, as well as the Oricorio. Gonna start things off right away by pitching a Fire Energy to the discard pile, grabbing two more out of the deck, and it looks like Azul as well does not have much. Wow. And a nice top deck there for Andres is going to find that Crobat, so it can thin this hand down to at least two cards. We could just see take a little bit of a slower route. You may actually want to go ahead with a Power Accelerator, but Andres is going to go in with a little bit of a different strategy here. Smart play as well. Going to discard that Boss's Orders off the Giant Hearth. Usually would say, hey, I don't need to utilize that Stadium card. I have no Fire Energy in my deck, but you can still utilize it to discard a card from your hand and draw an extra card off Crobat. And as we know in the Pokemon trading card game, Chip, every card matters.
Absolutely. Drawing cards is pretty good, and we do see Andres is able to find that Darkness Energy, able to get the attachment. Has a couple Boss in hand. I guess you could go ahead and play one here to try to slow Azul down a little bit, limit the Stellar Wish options, as we do see Andres does opt for that option. And yeah, does just get the attachment onto Eternatus. It would be nice to get off a Power Accelerator, but I think the benefit of drawing an extra card to just try to get the one energy attachment is definitely a little bit better here for Andres. Now, on Azul's side, this is a time where if you can find the Welder, you can find the Cramorant V, and you can get a Spit Shot off onto that Eternatus that has an energy attached to it, you could actually find yourself in a pretty solid spot here. So let's see if Azul can put together those pieces. Quick Ball, not a bad start.
Yeah, I believe the Pokegear also getting played, so may have the cards necessary. Needs to find some way to apply pressure. As you said, Cramorant would be nice. Sort of as we see, a lot of these Tempo Zard players try to follow the energy. So wherever the energy gets attacked or attached, that's where the damage goes, right? You really want to apply pressure to something that's not the Yveltal on the active, as it really provides nothing except for a pivot in this Eternatus deck. As we are going to see that Quick Ball that got grabbed off the Stellar Wish played, we'll go ahead and pitch that Boss's Orders that got grabbed off the Pokegear and find a Dene GX. We may be seeing a Dene change come down and is going to get rid of a few crucial pieces, mainly being that Fire Crystal is very useful for getting energies back in the late game. Azul is going to have to find a lot off of the 6 cards from the Dene, something like the Cramorant, the Welder. A lot of things need to happen here for Azul's in order to go Azul's way, or else we could just see Andres start to apply pressure and Azul have no way to keep up.
Yeah, if Azul doesn't really find much here, it could be onto Andres to just kind of run away with this game potentially, unless Azul has an incredible turn where he's able to get a bunch of energies in hand and get a big one-hit KO with Blacephalon. That's pretty tough to do until the late game, to be honest, as we just see the Reshiram and Charizard come down and then a Dark Asset on Crobat, only drawing 2 cards, not quite as many as you would like to see.
Yeah, and utilizing that Giant Hearth to ditch a Giant Hearth, so must have found the Welder there off of those two cards. A big grab is going to actually go ahead and throw these energies onto the Reshiram and Charizard. We did actually see that Galarian Zigzagoon as well get discarded, as we do see right there. That could be a crucial card in this matchup eventually, but we see Double Blaze GX is going to actually take a prize card on this Yveltal. That does not feel good if you're Azul, but you need to start applying pressure in this matchup as we see an excellent top deck in that Dark Energy. We could see this Eternatus get a one-shot on this Reshiram and Charizard and take 3 prize cards right away.
It's pretty tough for Andres to find the full bench of Pokemon. You can only use one Crobat Dark Asset a turn, and especially with this hand specifically where you're not able to draw anymore, thanks to the fact you can't use another Crobat, and thanks to the fact that you, of course, didn't draw another energy, but you at least can get a 2-hit KO lined up on this Reshiram and Charizard. You do open up the path, however, for a big Flare Strike or even an Outrage for a lot of damage.
Yeah, definitely a lot of options to be played here, as we do see the Galarian Zigzagoon. I think considering playing that down, is going to go ahead and bench that. We'll be able to deal 10 damage to any Pokemon that he chooses to. So we will actually go ahead and ping the Crobat, as we see, looks like opting to use Dread End, but it's not going to be enough to hit a one-shot onto this Reshiram and Charizard, dealing 180 damage. So has the ability now to even put in more work with this Reshiram and Charizard. Outrage dealing 210 damage alone, and can attach an extra energy there to deal 230 with Flare Strike. Azul feels like after that rough start, is in a pretty solid position here.
Yeah, it definitely could be. I mean, this game is far from over. It could definitely still go either way. Azul's going to go ahead and grab some energies here, trying to get some attachments, maybe has the Welder in hand already. But what you really want to do is try to figure out the 2-hit KO on this first Eternatus, and then build up to eventually being able to find the 1-hit KO with that Fireball Circus on the baby Blacephalon to take out that second VMAX. So you really only have to take 2 knockouts in order to win the game.
Yeah, and it looks like Azul just eyeing up the options on whether or not to go in, maybe with something like this Reshiram and Charizard, sacrifice it in order to apply some pressure to this Eternatus VMAX. We will actually see the energy go down into that Blacephalon, and Outrage is dealing 210 damage. And now, if you're Andres, you're in a little bit of a tough position. You have to really consider which of these threats is big. Obviously, the Blacephalon able to deal tons of damage with Fireball Circus. Is down a fair amount of boss's orders. I think we see 3 already in the discard pile. And in this list, there is not that many. I believe there is 4 actually in this list. So has 1 more boss's orders left, as does find the Marnie, which will be able to put Azul down to 3 less cards in this hand. This Blacephalon deck wants to constantly build the hand size up to have access to lots of fire energy throughout the game.
Yeah, Azul can draw a lot of cards on the next turn. We already see that Jirachi in play with the Stellar Wish, of course. We could also definitely see an Oricorio come down with Dance of Tribute to draw some cards. So for Andres here, I think a Power Plant draw would be pretty strong, especially when you're combining it with this Marnie. Doesn't look like he was able to find it, but still going to be able to do enough damage to take this knockout here on the Reshiram and Charizard. And now it's on to Azul. We know the Giant Hearth is in play, so you'll be able to find at least enough energy to attack, but it's how many energy can you find in order to discard to take a knockout, or can you power up a different attacker, maybe something like that Cramorant in this spot.
Yeah, this would be a really excellent spot for Azul if that Galarian Zigzagoon was still in the deck. Would go down to 3 prizes if this Eternatus VMAX gets knocked out. And then with 2 Zigzagoon pings onto this Crobat, Cramorant would be doing enough to take a knockout with Spit Shot to take those final 2 prize cards. So Azul is going to have to readjust the strategy a little bit, as Cherish Ball is going to grab that Oricorio, as you mentioned, going to allow Azul to draw 3 additional cards right away anytime during the turn, but is going to go ahead and opt to utilize that right now. Doesn't even need to play a Welder in this case, can just manually attach to this Blacephalon, so we'll just need to find 1 additional energy. Giant Hearth will be able to secure a minimum of 2 out of the deck. So this seems like Azul is in a pretty solid spot. Andres has the return knockout, but this game is far from over for either of these players. This one is definitely, I think, going to come down to the wire, as I think Azul just evaluating the options here on what to do. Again, you really want to take prize cards here, but Azul needs to make sure there is a follow-up, so the second Eternatus VMAX does not just go ahead and run things over. As Giant Hearth will ditch the Jirachi, going to grab 2 more fire energy. I'm sure we're going to see one of those come down on this Blacephalon. What else gets powered up is anyone's guess at this point.
Definitely, and we'll have to see how Azul plays it. Is going to go ahead and bench the Cramorant here, and if, the Welder is in hand, we can still see some cards accelerated. I actually feel like Cramorant is the better attacker in this spot. You go ahead and knock out the Eternatus VMAX in the active with it, and then you can build up for the big Fireball Circus potentially on the last turn. Andres does have a really solid combination of cards in hand to combat this. We see the Power Plant, we see the Marnie, and it's going to be, if Azul can not find another Giant Hearth, that's going to really limit the options, because that will turn off the Dance of Tribute from the Oricorio, and also does take out the Giant Hearth, which is one of the ways to find energies.
Yeah, and another thing to note, as we talked about, Andres is down a lot of these boss's orders, 3 out of the 4. And Azul, I think, maybe making that play, realizing that if you don't have a way to pick off my Blacephalon necessarily, and you have to take this knockout on Cramorant with the Eternatus VMAX, that could be my chance. I still have 3 Fire Crystal left in the deck, ways to draw cards with Oricorio. I believe only down 2 Welder as well. So I think Azul has the combination of cards to most likely get there. But as you said, Power Plant, shutting off that Oricorio's Dance of Tribute. We do see a fair amount of Giant Hearth in this card pile. Is playing 4 copies. Obviously, this fire deck is evaluating that. I think just choosing where to put the damage counter with Zigzagoon, not very relevant, as most things will just be getting knocked out from an Eternatus VMAX, and is going to go ahead and pair this with the Marnie to put Azul down to half the hand size he has right now. And also finding a Crushing Hammer here is a nice grab. Usually not very relevant against these fire decks where you can build up something in one turn, but this Hammerheads is now going to require Azul to find a Welder on top of everything else that he needs. We'll need to find now a total of 2 energy on the active plus 7 energy, so needs to find 9 energy total in order to get a knockout onto this 340 HP monster that is Eternatus VMAX.
Yeah, this is it. This is going to be the last turn of a game. Either Azul is able to find the pieces to pull off the Fireball Circus, or Andres will just take their last prize card on the next turn. Of course, able to knock anything out that Azul could send up because of how powerful Dread End is. We do see Azul finds the Quick Ball here. That could be an out to something like the Mewtwo to put the Welder on top, potentially. We also would have to see if Azul has a Stadium. That's a big piece here, because right now you're not drawing much with the Oricorio, and it looks like it's just a Reshiram and Charizard, maybe just thinning the deck out a little bit. It's going to be tough here. Azul needs to draw a lot of cards. That is a good first step, though. Giant Hearth and Dedene's Dede Change. Here's a ton of cards. Azul, only with 12 cards left in deck, can actually see, I think, most of the cards available.
Yeah, has not used Dance of Tribute yet, still has the Jirachi Stellar Wish ability at disposal, and I believe there are still 2 Welder left in the deck, as Quick Ball will thin yet another card out of this deck, that being the Mewtwo with Mind Report. So I don't think there's any way to really open this bench space up, so we'll just go ahead and utilize the Dance of Tribute. Gonna draw 3 cards from the top of the deck, looking for that Welder, in addition to 8 Fire Energy. Needs the 1 on the active and 7 more to deal 350 damage to take a knockout, as looks like another Quick Ball is going to get utilized, so I think may have drawn to that off the Oricorio. And here's the Pokegear. That's going to guarantee the Welder that's in the deck, looking through the entire deck, all 7 cards. And there's the Fire Crystal. Chip, I think we may be seeing a knockout onto this VMAX. Here is the Welder. Going to go ahead and throw that last energy on. 3 more cards. Azul having every card in the deck except for 3. There's that first Fire Crystal, and there's a second one. Azul now just needs 1 more energy to take this game, and a way to switch this Jirachi out of the active. There's the switch. I think he has it.
Looks like it. Fireball Circus needing to discard 7 energies here. Discards 1 more for good measure here. 8 to do 400 damage, and seemingly out of nowhere. You draw incredibly well there off of the Marnie, as Azul able to find the Stadium replacement, able to find the Dedenne to Dede change, and Azul drew basically the entire remainder of the deck and ended up winning that game.
Yeah, and just finishing up some things, discarding the bench down, Azul will go ahead and take the first game of this set, winning it in time. So these are big matches for both of these players. Every game counts, and Azul getting it off to a great start here, really just showing us how this Tempo Zard deck can really put the tempo on, put the heat on, and take these big knockouts. When put in such a bad position, we thought Marnie and Plant would maybe be enough to slow Azul down, but finding the correct combination of cards to take a knockout and able to clinch up that game number 1.
Absolutely. Well played by Azul. I would say also well played by Andres. I think that, you need to get some of those Marnies to stick a little bit better. You got to hope that your opponent draws a little bit slower, but nothing's stopping Azul today, it seems. Andres is going to try his best. We've, of course, got a second game here of this match. Andres needing to win this game in order to force a game 3 here on this win-in round. Winner, of course, moving on to the global finals, and then the loser will have to fight their way through the loser's bracket. So let's go ahead and get down to this second game. Andres is going to have the option here. Do they choose to go first? Do they choose to go second? I think generally you want to get the attachment to your Eternatus on the first turn, but also at the same time, there is a lot of benefit in forcing this welder-reliant deck to go first since they cannot play a supporter.
Yeah, we haven't really seen Andres utilize the power accelerator to get more energy into play throughout the rounds that we have seen. Is actually going to go ahead and opt to go second here in game number 2. It's going to allow Azul will not be able to play Welder this turn, but can still put on some pressure with this Reshiram and Charizard. We'll see what he opts to go ahead and start attachments with. We see the Cramorant come down to the board and is going to go ahead and manually attach the Fire Energy. And that's really all this Welder deck can do going first. Cannot play Welder. Really no reason to dig through your deck even further, as his hand is not looking very good for Andres. Has Pokemon Communications. We may just see something like this Turnus get grabbed, but it actually looks like going to grab the Crobat. And this hand is all dark energy besides this Crobat. We'll be able to look at 3 more cards, but this is not looking so great for Andres. We'll go ahead and use Dark Acid for 3. Does find the Eternatus dark energy, but Chip, as we see in his hand, there is not really much of a follow-up for the following turn.
Yeah, I understand Andres' struggle there on the first turn. Do you grab the Eternatus, just get the guaranteed attachment? Well, I mean, if you do that, you're kind of just stuck with a terrible hand. So decided to go with the Crobat to draw 3 cards, try to advance the hand a little bit. Got bailed out, was able to still find an Eternatus, get the energy on it. Sure, this hand is still not super strong, but you've gotten through more of the deck. Now you're increasing your opportunities, increasing your top deck outs to continue to play through this game and to continue to draw cards.
Yes, action back on Azul. We'll start things out with a Cherish Ball. Is going to go ahead and search the deck for any GX Pokemon, so can find something like another Reshiram and Charizard. Dedenne or Oricorio has plenty of options to look at right now when it comes to things. So I think just doing a first deck search as well. Obviously, these players, as we said, checking your prizes, so important in the Pokemon trading card game. You want to know what pieces, especially in what we would say a deck that requires combos to get off, right? You need to know how many Fire Energy are in your deck. You need to know how many Fire Crystal you have. A lot of key pieces, specifically in this Tempo Zard deck, but also in majority of decks. We'll see what gets grabbed. We could very likely see the Dedenne get grabbed so that it can get Azul some more fresh cards out of the deck. But we're actually going to go ahead and see it grab the Oricorio. Just wants to get that into play, it looks like, at this point, possibly thinning it out of the deck. But we know how powerful Oricorio is in late turns of the game. Allowed Azul to find the cards necessary last game to take the knockout onto that big Eternatus VMAX. What do you think Azul's main game plan is going to be on the second turn of the game? Is there anything he specifically really wants to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, I think here you're just going to try to get off as big of an attack as you can. Take the prizes quickly. I mean, that's how you win the game, right? You got to take all 6 of your prize cards before your opponent does. So you want to apply the pressure here if you can. You've got 2 options with the Reshiram and Charizard, either Double Blaze or Flare Strike. I don't hate either option at this point. Double Blaze would mean you can Flare Strike for a little bit more damage next turn, but also if you Flare Strike, you have the option to get Double Blaze for the full effect. But this is a matchup where I think Double Blazing for 300 versus Double Blazing for 200 doesn't really matter. Of course, Eternatus VMAX with that monstrous 340 HP.
Yeah, we see the Zigzagoon will come down in the second game. Interestingly enough, pinging the Spiritomb in the active, it looks like Azul is trying to line up an Outrage line of play. Obviously, the more damage counters you put on Spiritomb, if you're not knocking it out, the more that Anguish Cry attack does. So Azul taking maybe a little bit riskier of a play. You obviously don't want to really put too much energies onto this Reshiram and Charizard to take a knockout on such a frail Pokemon like Spiritomb, only having 40 HP remaining, as we will see that Dead change. Go ahead and discard the hand. Is going to find, it looks like the Welder in combination with 2 Fire Energies to put that energies onto Cramorant. We could actually see this Cramorant come in if Azul has that extra Fire Energy and a Switch in combination, can target down that Eternatus with the energy. And if Andres VMAXes that, it's going to be very easy for Azul to pick up that 3 prize knockout. Otherwise, you have to go back to the drawing board with building up another Eternatus, as we do see the Quick Ball discard the reset stamp can definitely be a crucial card later on in this game, especially if your opponent has exhausted a lot of resources. But looks like Azul valuing possibly getting another card out of the deck, could grab Crobat to dig through the deck even farther, or something like the Jirachi to Stellar Wish. And it looks like we will see the Jirachi get grabbed out of the deck. Azul may have the switching cards necessary, and then we will see what exactly happens. There's the Jirachi, and there is the switch. So Switch will go ahead and pivot into the Jirachi. We'll utilize Stellar Wish to look at the top 5 cards. And there's another Giant Hearth. Maybe not the best grab there if you're Azul. Maybe looking for something else in combination with this. Has the guaranteed, I think, Fire Energy. I don't know if he has utilized the Giant Hearth yet. But regardless, we're going to be seeing Azul put on some pressure this turn.
Absolutely. We do see this scoop up net coming down here. Actually going to go ahead and pick up the Zigzagoon. I guess grab the switch off the Stellar Wish, right? So you still have that pivot option. And the Mewtwo's Mind Report, extremely valuable heal here, able to guarantee the Welder for the next turn. And actually, no attack, it looks like. We're just going to see the pass. And it's going to be onto Andres, who does top deck a Crobat. Super good draw here. Now you could definitely threaten an attack on this turn. You can play out a decent amount of this hand here. You could even play it all out if you wanted to, by attaching the Darkness Energy and then also going for the boss's orders. You also could knock out this Jirachi here with Anguish Cry, which would not be terrible. Force your opponent to try to maybe deal with this Spiritomb. And also a pretty good draw here. That Power Plant could limit Azul's options.
An interesting choice to go ahead and play that Great Ball before the Quick Ball. And we see that could have actually been punished Andres a little bit here. It's one less card in your deck that is not an Eternatus VMAX, and really wanted to find that off the Great Ball to extend that bench size and open up a potential Crobat for the following turn. But we see Andres is back to just another poor hand here, has no real response, and is going to actually go ahead and Boss's Orders the Oricorio up. Spiritomb dealing enough damage due to that 2x weakness on Oricorio to Dark-type Pokemon, will be able to deal 200 damage and take the knockout. But again, it really comes down to what prize card gets taken here, in addition to the top deck as well. Not two great cards. Azul could have an opportunity here to start applying pressure, especially with an easy knockout online with that Reshiram and Charizard only having to deal 30 damage, which is perfect math for that outrageous Jirachi. Will start things off with a Stellar Wish. Not going to grab anything. You hate to see that off of the Stellar Wishes. Really, you just want to find anything, if that, to help out, especially a way to bump this Power Plant, which we do find. There is the Giant Hearth, yet another one coming down for Azul. There's multiple game plans here. Do you think we're going to see him deal with something like the Spiritomb, or is he going to target it with something like the Spit Shot on that Cramorant and apply pressure to that Eternatus V?
Yeah, I think I definitely would like to see the Spit Shot here. Go ahead and get some pressure onto that Eternatus. That's the real threat. Like, sure, Spiritomb is, doing a little bit of damage here and there, but it's never going to be knocking out the Cramorant that's in the active spot. Yeah, I mean, your opponent could go for something like a Boss's Orders to bring up your Jirachi to take a prize, but you really want to target down what the actual threat is, which is this Eternatus V on the bench before it can become an Eternatus V Max.
And another pretty terrible top deck there. Eternatus V, Hammer is going to flip tails. There's not much Andres can do with this hand. I mean, you could switch into the Yveltal, but then another Spit Shot just takes the knockout. There's really no way to play around another Spit Shot next turn. There are 2 Welder left in the deck. Mewtwo can obviously recycle Welder in combination with something like the Stellar Wish to guarantee that grab. It looks like Azul has put himself in a position, obviously in credit with Andres, pretty poor draws at this point, where you can just get all the energy off of the main attackers on the board, only that one Eternatus, and is actually going to go ahead and make a smart play, grabbing the Crobat out of the deck with the Quick Ball, knows that that's probably going to be what gets played down next turn if either the Spiritomb gets knocked out or that Eternatus V on the bench. Azul may be able to notice here that Andres' hand is lacking after we most likely just see the Anguish Cry into this active. I think also just considering whether or not to utilize Building Spite. If you put too much damage on that Spiritomb, that Zigzagoon can come through and clean up a knockout without utilizing an attack, which would allow Azul to put on even more pressure in this scenario.
Yeah, you get the 2-8 KO regardless here with the Anguish Cry, so no reason to open yourself up to potentially getting hurt by a double Zigzagoon play, so this makes sense. The problem with Andres' board here is, I mean, you can draw cards with the Crobat next turn, sure, but if you do that, you're not going to have a spot to bench an Eternatus, which you really want to try to do when you're playing an Eternatus deck, right? For Azul, if Azul can find the welder here, we of course could see the knockout on the Eternatus on the bench. And that's another reason I really like the decision by Azul to just target down the Eternatus on the bench as opposed to knocking out the Spiritomb, is you keep your opponent's bench locked up a little bit. Now in this spot, you're going to be clearing a bench spot regardless. It doesn't look like actually Azul had the welder, so has to go with the Outrage to get a prize here. And I think this is going to work out pretty nicely for Azul.
A Great Ball finally will find the Eternatus VMAX, so that will come into play. But the problem, as I said before, when you VMAX these Eternatuses, you turn that from a 2-prize Pokemon into a 3-prize Pokemon, which, I mean, it makes it more of a liability. Obviously, you get access to an even stronger attack, and actually is going to go ahead and Giant Hearth away the switch. Could have just switched into the Yveltal if a different Pokemon got promoted. And we do see there are the cards in Andres' hand to line up a knockout, but the problem with this is if Azul can respond with a knockout onto this Eternatus VMAX, Andres will be left with no energy in play, and this Eternatus deck needs time to power up. It is a 2-energy attacker, and this can start to be where Azul has put on enough pressure to put Andres on the back foot, and in combination with targeting it down with repeated spit shots, this is where it can get a little scary and tricky for Andres. He's going to go ahead and take the knockout with Dread End, dealing 270 damage. Perfect math to knock out most of these tag team Pokemon in the format. We'll go down to 1 prize card. I think Azul may have gotten rid of this reset stamp, but this would be a perfect time to utilize that if it's still in the deck.
Yeah, Azul does have 1 copy of Stamp in the list. We'll see if it's not discarded already. We'll see if Azul can find it here to limit Andres to just 1 single card. Andres does have a path to win the game on the next turn. That Spiritomb can pick up a KO on a Jirachi. It does deal exactly 70 damage if you've got 2 damage counters on Spiritomb. So combined with Building Spite, Andres can find that next turn as long as you find the boss's orders. But Azul can also play around this by utilizing Scoop Up Net, taking that Jirachi out of play, and also eliminating that potential lose condition for Azul, right?
Yeah, exactly. It looks like going to start things off. I think just thinking through the plays is going to utilize Giant Hearth to get rid of that fire energy to get 2. So nice little trade, get 1 for 2. Always great with Giant Hearth. Wants to thin out the deck a little bit more. I'm sure looking for something like the Welder, which Azul does find off the Stellar Wish and has the Reshiram and Charizard, which is a perfect attacker in this situation, dealing enough damage with that Double Blaze for the first effect for 200 damage. And we may just see Azul take 3 prize cards, and at this point, we'll actually be super close to victory. We do know Azul plays that 1 copy of Boss's Orders in deck, so is trying to set up the game in 2 turns. I think this game may come down to the next couple of turns, Chip. Andres really needs to put some pressure on, and we'll also have to limit the bench down to 5 Pokemon now that that Eternal Zone ability is no longer in play.
Andres is in a tough spot. It's going to be hard to win this game, but you got to kind of hope, I think, at this point that Azul just misses on the boss's orders. You've got a couple of Crushing Hammers in hand. As we see, Andres actually does have the boss's orders, so it is fortunate for Azul that he chose not to bench the Jirachi once again. But if we do see a couple of Hammerheads here, we see 1-heads, second tails, that's okay though. We could still see Andres try to find a way back into this one where you have to go like attach to the Eternatus V on the bench, you have to Marnie your opponent, and then, I mean, it's just up to hoping. You got to have your fingers crossed and hope that your opponent is unable to find the pieces to boss's orders. And I guess actually now with that Crushing Hammer heads, you can't Welder plus boss. So you could just leave the Eternatus on the bench with the energy, and there's no way for Azul to take 2 prizes at this point.
Oh, and looking through, Andres so close to actually being able to close the game out. If that Spiritomb had 1 more damage counter on it, it would be enough to take the knockout onto that Cramorant. Azul smartly scoop up netting that Jirachi would have been enough to knock out the Jirachi. So Azul, again, playing super smart in this match, wants to remove as many win conditions for Andres as possible, as all the Crobats have been discarded, so that, again, is 1 less way. As we talked about before, Spit Shot in combination with Zigzagoon Pings can be enough to take a win at this point. But here we are going to see the Marnie get played, so we'll go ahead and put Azul's big hand size down to 4, as Andres will draw 5 cards into a solid set of cards, but I think it's really going to come down more so to what Azul has this turn. If Azul doesn't have a way to take the game, I think Andres has enough Pokemon left in deck to just hit with the turn of this VMAX and take this game.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to, I mean, also Andres here not having a Crobat in play is really huge. That opens up a win condition for Azul as well, where you could go double Zigzagoon Ping plus Cramorant Spit Shot, do that extra damage there. So actually, Andres not even having any other Pokemon in the deck. So you actually, as Andres, you cannot take a knockout on this Reshiram and Charizard next turn. You would have to find a boss's orders in order to win the game. So I think that's why Andres here decided to go ahead and shuffle the deck. That's a key thing here because the Marnie did put a boss's orders on the bottom of the deck. So now by shuffling it via the Giant Hearth, sure, you don't have any fire energies in your list. You're not going to get any real value from it. You do shuffle the deck still. So now you have an increased odds to draw into a boss's orders next turn.
Yeah, and one thing to note, again, for anyone who is just joining us or needs a reminder, this is an open deck list tournament. So both players can see what copies of cards are left in deck. We could actually see Azul take a play where he realizes that Andres is down to maybe just, I think, one Pokemon left, assuming none are prized, and can just confidently sit here with the Reshiram and Charizard in the active, knowing that Andres does not really have a way, would need to find boss's orders to get around this. So this is where knowing what your cards in your opponent's deck list can be super important to creating new lines of play. And Azul is going to do just that and Outrage onto the active Yveltal. And we do see Quick Ball top deck, but that's not a boss's orders for Andres. And this is definitely a tough position. If you bring up the Eternatus and hit into the Reshiram and Charizard, it's just one less card your opponent needs. Now they can use Outrage to get the knockout. But I feel like you have to at least come up and swing with this at this point, right? Actually going to go ahead and discard the Dark Energy. Interesting choice there to value keeping an extra Pokemon. You're not going to be one-shotting this Reshiram and Charizard anyway. So now you will need to find one extra piece. What do you think about the decision, Chip?
Yeah, I mean, you're forcing yourself to find one more piece, but, you're playing the supporter. You still got a decent amount of energy left. I was actually just sitting here thinking, I feel like if Andres, after hitting the Crushing Hammer heads last turn, had just held that hand, Andres would have won this game, right? Azul does not have a way to put 2 energies on the Reshiram and Charizard and take a 2-prize knockout on the bench, right? Azul has 2 prizes left. And, if that reset stamp is gone, we don't know for sure if it is, but you seemed to think it might have gotten discarded. So if that is the case, Andres had the energy for the Spiritomb and the boss's orders in hand, so you could have won with the Spiritomb, bringing up the Cramorant. Now, you're just having to pass here. Azul has the way to get the energy in hand, right? Has the Giant Hearth, assuming there's energies left in the deck. And if Azul can find the boss's orders, there are 2 Eternatus V on the bench that Flare Strike can KO. So I actually even wonder, maybe Andres didn't need to bench these 2 Eternatus Vs.
Yeah, I think that could have been the downfall in this game potentially here. If those Vs were not in play, then Azul would have no way to take the game this turn. We need to find a crazy amount of cards off of the Marnie. We need to find Blacephalon, Welder, a total of 12 energies, or a total of 10 energies, my mistake, to take this knockout. And while you do have the cards necessary with this hand to take the win with boss's orders, again, as you talked about, that decision is kind of 2 sides of the same coin, right? You guarantee the game for yourself, but you leave your opponent with such a massive hand size. So you're pretty much putting it on them to have it that turn. As we actually see, Quick Ball will discard the Giant Hearth. The energy will get attached to the active. Zigzagoon will go ahead and place an extra damage counter on that Spiritomb. And this is going to be a big Crobat for 5 cards. Can Azul find the boss's orders needed to take this game? Only plays 1 in the deck, so we'll need to find that there. Here's a big Pokegear. It does find the boss's orders. That is huge here. Azul will have the cards necessary to take the knockout because of Andres benching those Eternatus V. Azul is going to go ahead and take this set 2-0 and will be your second player advancing into the global finals. What an excellent play by Azul, really showcasing again the power of this Welder box deck, able to apply so much pressure, was able to find the pieces there in that final turn of game number 2. And congratulations to Azul, advancing to the global finals with a 7-0 record, not dropping a single game in this tournament.
Incredible, especially with a Welder deck nonetheless. Welder decks are kind of known to be a little inconsistent here and there, but Azul was running hot today, was able to take the entire winner's side bracket down, and Kevin Kruger and Azul Garcia Griego are going to be the first 2 players from the North American region to advance to the global finals, where they will be playing against the top 4 players from each of the 4 rating zones from each of the 4 regions. But Andres is not quite done yet. Of course, losing this game does throw him down to the loser's bracket, and is still going to have an opportunity here in losers round number 12 in order to secure themselves a spot into